Hi, let me introduce myself. My name is Don. I am presently in Ukraine, Kiev, and I'd like to talk about foreign policy. The Biden administration's total failure in foreign policy. As far as qualifications, I'm 74 years old. I've lived a few years. I grew up in the rural Midwest. I made my career in information technology. I'm still a very, very good ASP.NET C# programmer. During my career, I've worked in 6 states, 3 geographical areas, upper Midwest, Texas, and the Northeast. I've been to about half the states in the United States for a week or more, and I've gotten around. Internationally, I've been to Colombia, to Costa Rica, to Puerto Rico, and since I've been retired, semi-retired, I live in Ukraine. I've been to Russia, I've been to Poland, I've been to the Baltics. Now let me make a point. There's a world of difference between visiting a different country or a different state as a tourist and going there to work. When you go there to work, you get to see the nation as it is, not through some rose-colored glasses. You get to experience it on a whole different level, and you get to understand how people think. Of course, it's even more different if you actually live in a country for 4 years, as I've lived in Ukraine for 4 years. This second picture is in St. Petersburg, Russia, in 2019. I've been there, I think, 5 times already for dance competitions. It's something you probably should understand. Although I live in Ukraine, in Kiev, the predominant language here is not Ukrainian, it's Russian. Most of my neighbors speak Russian, not Ukrainian. Even though they are very loyal to Ukraine, they are Russian. Я также говорю по-русски, но плохо. Я могу читать немного по-русски. Я понимаю речь немного больше. Anyway, next month I'm planning on a trip from Kiev to Italy and Spain, with 2 dance competitions on the way. I think you're going to like that too, so stay tuned. I have my own YouTube channel, so I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe to me if you haven't already, and drop a like on this video. I think you're really going to like it. Now, regarding Ukraine, I think Ukraine is the biggest foreign policy mistake that the United States has made in its entire history. It may be the end of the United States before this is all over. It may even, in fact, be the end of Western civilization. It may even be the end of the human race itself. The aim of this video is to expose Biden as a totally incompetent fool. And it's not Biden alone, it's the Biden administration. It is also the leadership of the House and the Senate. A bunch of warmongering fools. So let me explain the spreadsheet a little. At the top, you'll see a column called Nation. This is simply a list of all the major nations in the world. Relative importance is just that. China is a more important nation with regard to U.S. relations than, say, Switzerland. Their starting point is the state of the relations between the United States and that nation. It's also a state of relations between humanity in general and that nation. Current point is now. A starting point was when Biden took over. The final column is the column B times column E, or a relative score. Okay, let's get started with the first nation, China. China is the world's most important nation. They have roughly 1/6 of the world population. They have the world's largest manufacturing economy. They have very little national debt. They have a large, actually the best army in the world. They have a competent Navy. They have a competent Air Force. They have more engineers, more and some better engineers than the United States has, and they are going to pass the United States in every category within the next 10 years. Starting point, -1, which is not great as far as the relations between the United States and China. They were tense, but they were not hostile. We were on a respectful plateau with them, heavily competing with them in economics, not any kind of military confrontation. The current status of the relationship between the United States and China is about -4. We are on the verge of war with China, and it's a war we will lose badly. Oh, and then there's one more thing. China has nukes, a lot of them, and they've pretty much doubled the number of nukes they have since Biden took over. Now, you're welcome to disagree with me on any point in this entire video. Just add your comments down below. If you've subscribed to me, I'll be glad to debate with you, to talk to you. Nation number 2, Russia. Prior to Biden taking over, relations between the United States and Russia were actually fairly good. They were at least civil. There was some economic cooperation. We were selling some things to Russia. Russia was selling some things to us. And they were keeping price of energy relatively low. Well, things have gone downhill. Matter of fact, they can't get worse. We are on the verge of all-out nuclear war between the United States and Russia. Ukraine is currently bombing a nuclear power plant in Russian-controlled area, and this is the first use. I mean, these are our shells, our rockets that are hitting a nuclear power plant and threatening the entire world with contamination. This is first use. To make matters worse, last weekend, Ukraine, with America's blessing, sent a terrorist into Moscow with instructions and orders to kill a friend of Putin's. Now, she took her 12-year-old daughter along, endangering her daughter, but she didn't succeed. Instead, she killed this man's daughter. She put a bomb under his car, and his daughter started the car and died. And the result is probably that Russia is going to declare Ukraine a terrorist state. And this means that if the United States gives one more bullet to Ukraine, the United States is aiding a terrorist state. It also means that if Germany sends any more weapons to Ukraine, that Russia will turn off the gas. Nord Stream 1 will shut off completely, and Nord Stream 2 will never start. For India, prior to Biden taking over, India was a close ally of the United States. We were selling weapons to them. We were trading with them very heavily. They were our best ally in Asia. But all this has changed. When the war between Russia and Ukraine started, the United States put sanctions on Russia. And then they went to every other country in the world saying, if you don't honor these sanctions, we're going to put sanctions on you. Well, a nation like India didn't particularly appreciate that. A nation like India is a proud nation with thousands of years of history. A nation like India is one of the foundations of civilization, and they didn't like it. They went along with it for a while, but then Russia didn't collapse. Then Russia and China became closer together, and And India decided that it was safe to ignore the U.S. sanctions. And it was safe. So what is happening right now? What's happening is that India is buying Russian oil, as much of it as they can get. And then they put it on a different ship and they send it to Europe. And Europe buys this Russian oil from India and circumvents the sanctions. India is getting rich off of this. As a few of you might know, India and China have had several border skirmishes. People have been killed. It's not exactly a major war, but it's major to the people that die in it. But since the war between Russia and Ukraine has started, and since the sanctions, India has been remarkably friendly with China. Now this is a very strange thing. They put aside thousands of years of animosity, and they're talking like friends. Why? Because it's profitable. It's good for both of them. It's good for Russia, it's good for China, and it's very, very, very good for India. Well, who's this bad for? Well, of course, it's bad for the United States. India was a close ally. No more. India had been buying major weapon systems from the United States. No more. India had been in arguments, border skirmishes, little wars with China. No more. India and China are now making up. After thousands of years of animosity, they are now allies. Against who? Against the United States. And why? Because it's good for everybody except the United States. As you can see, there's still a long list of countries in this spreadsheet, and I'm going to do new videos soon about the rest of them. But I'd like to say one last thing about this before I end it, because it's difficult to understand for me how this war between Russia and Ukraine could have been allowed, could have been forced on both parties. I'm going to repeat it again. Ukraine didn't want this war. Ukraine has suffered horribly. Russia didn't want this war. Russia has also suffered horribly. Only the United States, only the Biden administration wanted this war. No one else had a choice.